Within a few years of gaining its independence from Great Britain, the United States is a deeply divided nation. Back in 1765, the Massachusetts attorney James Otis had warned that if the American colonies were left to themselves, they would soon be a mere shambles of blood and confusion. Well, that warning could easily have become a prophecy. I'm Joseph Loconte, an author and historian, and I'm walking in the footsteps of the most important founding father that most Americans have never heard of, Dr. Benjamin Rush. About the only thing that everyone agrees on is that the original Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, isn't working. Without a common enemy, it's too weak to hold the country together. The founders face a truly daunting challenge: design a new constitution strong enough to bind the states together without giving too much power to a national government, a government that would trample individual rights and freedoms. Well, nothing like this has ever been tried before, and history is not on their side.
Everyone in Europe who's watching this American experiment closely, they're literally taking bets on when this thing's going to all collapse.
The vultures are swooping, aren't they?
Vultures are swooping around here.
Representatives from all 13 states gather here for the Constitutional Convention, where they engage in a fierce debate about how to build a just, durable, and democratic society.
Rush is great because right on the eve of the Constitutional Convention, he writes an address to the American people. He says the American War is over, meaning the Revolutionary War, but this is not the case with the American Revolution. Only the first act of the great drama is over. And what he means by that is, it's one thing to win independence, but the real work is this experiment in liberty, equality, and self-government.
Although Benjamin Rush is not one of the delegates to the convention, he is the ultimate insider. He served with these men in Congress. He was with them on the battlefield, and he's attended to them as their family physician. He and his wife, Julia, are popular hosts for the delegates while they're in town. And although the proceedings are kept secret, he is a reliable gossip. He also helps John Adams to publish his influential defense of Republican government, which helps to frame the debates over questions like the separation of powers.
They have to negotiate with one another. They are grappling with issues that are still with us today, right? The balance of executive power and the legislature, and how do we create a balanced form of government? How do we accept the fact that humans are flawed people who have self-interest, right? And without a sovereign, who is the ultimate arbiter of these questions, how do you give that to the people?
They're debating a new constitution for this republic, and it's happening in this space, the most deliberative body of individuals trying to decide the political fate of a country. You really can't think of another moment in all of Western history when a group of individuals came together and thought rationally and calmly and debated what form of government are we going to live under? How are we going to create a republic that is going to endure?
This is Benjamin Franklin's copy of the Constitution.
It's his copy.
With his annotations on the side.
I didn't know they felt the need to annotate.
Well, so it's a really interesting story. So the Federalists wanted to get out ahead of the opposition. They knew this was going to be a controversial document. So this is part of that story of the Federalists trying to assuage the American public they should trust this. So Franklin sends this to a prominent reverend in Connecticut. He gives him the full text, but he's also summarizing to say this is what this is supposed to do, really to reassure him, to give him the talking points he needs to convince people they should vote for it.
Fascinating, because the debate with the Constitution is, are we going to have a federal government that's too strong?
Yeah.
That's going to become a tyranny.
Exactly.
How are you going to protect those unalienable rights, by the way, Mr. Franklin, right? So he's making the case for it in the margins, you're telling me.
Yeah.
If the American Revolution was something of a minor miracle in military terms, the Constitution produced in Philadelphia is something else. Through intense debate and political compromise, the founders deliver a constitution that makes possible the rights and freedoms proclaimed in the Declaration. They give the American people a republic, the most successful democratic republic in world history. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, the Constitution has to be approved by the American people. It has to be voted on by the states. Benjamin Rush is a vital player in the story. He is named a delegate to the Pennsylvania Convention to ratify the Constitution. He gives impassioned speeches on the convention floor urging unconditional adoption. There is no security for liberty, he says, except in two things: representation and checks and balances on political power. Pennsylvania, arguably the most important state in the Union, leads the way. After Delaware, it's the next state to ratify the Constitution. New Jersey, Georgia, and Connecticut quickly follow suit. A massive parade is held in Philadelphia, July 4th, 1788, the first celebration of the United States under its new Constitution. The highlight is a 20-gun warship renamed the Federal Union, pulled by 10 horses. Rush's son John, 10 years old, dressed up as a midshipman, waving to the crowd. The ratification of the Constitution, Rush says, was a solitary event in the history of mankind. It was as much the work of the hand of Providence as any of the miracles in the Old and New Testaments. Whatever hand Providence might have had in the Constitution, one of the great moral evils of the day was not made subject to divine scrutiny: slavery in America. Many of the founders, even those who owned slaves, they seem to have a guilty conscience about it. Nobody has a good word to say about it at the convention, but the framers evade this issue and they avoid any reference to slavery in the Constitution. From what I've learned about Benjamin Rush, if he had been a delegate to the convention, he would have delivered a fiery speech to his colleagues, imploring them to abolish this miserable institution. Along with Ben Franklin and John Dickinson, he was planning to lobby the convention to grant citizenship and full voting rights to all Black Americans. Remember, it was Rush who warned his fellow Americans before the Revolution that the plant of liberty could not thrive for long in the neighborhood of slavery. After winning independence, now you got the delegates to the convention. Nearly half of them own slaves themselves. Slavery will be debated to some degree at the convention, meaning there are some delegates who would like to see it abolished, but they don't go down that road. Well, by leaving it out, by not addressing it, did it make the Civil War inevitable? Now, what is your sense of that?
I think them not addressing it, they're kind of punting on this question for a couple generations later, you all deal with this. And we ultimately deal with it in a very bloody, very tragic way. We're still feeling the repercussions of them not addressing it back then.
But I want to gently push back on you a little bit on that. Put yourself in the place of the American founders. The colonies are divided on this question. If you insist upon it at the Constitutional Convention, the southern states are not going to sign on. The convention comes to an end. You don't have a constitution, and now you have these two separate entities, political entities. Did they have a choice?
No, you're absolutely right. It was the only political option that they had. But sometimes, and I think our country would show this, the right political move is the wrong moral move. The right thing for politics may not be the Christian move too. And that's part of the torture of being a politician, part of the torture of being a leader, is sometimes doing the right thing for one's country in order to keep it together is the wrong thing for that people group. Is the wrong thing according to the Bible. Is the wrong thing for human decency. So you're right, they didn't have much of a choice if they wanted the American experiment to not only continue to begin, but it was also the wrong thing for thousands, hundreds of thousands of Black people here.
Nevertheless, Dr. Rush won't let the issue go. He publishes another tract denouncing slavery. He raises funds for the independent Black churches of Philadelphia. And he helps to jumpstart the Pennsylvania Abolition Society, the nation's first major anti-slavery organization. One of its functions is to pay for attorneys to help African Americans buy their freedom. Benjamin Rush participates in a banquet honoring the Free African Society, which has to represent one of the most remarkable acts of racial reconciliation in the early years of the Republic.
So, Joe, this is a remarkable document. This is Benjamin Rush's commonplace book. It's almost like a diary. And this entry from August 22nd, 1793 tells you so much about Rush, but also what's happening in Philadelphia.
They attended a dinner a mile below the town on 2nd Street to celebrate the raising of the roof of the African church. Almost 100 white persons, chiefly carpenters, which tells us this is the ordinary guy on the street.
Yeah, these ideas are spreading throughout the city.
These are not just elites, okay? Carpenters dined at the table, who were waited upon by Africans. Afterwards, about 50 Black people, they then sat down at the dinner table, who were waited upon by the white people.
Exactly. They're all equal when it comes to serving one another. To have white people serve African Americans, that is a remarkable thing in the 1790s to have happen, and to do it so publicly here in Philadelphia.
This moment of sort of a mutuality, of equality. It's very similar to sort of coming to the altar where we're all equal at Christ's table.
Yes, the ground is level at the foot of the cross, as we say, right?
So he had real relationships
Yes.
with folks in the Free African Society here, with Reverend Absalom Jones, Reverend Richard Allen.
These are huge names in the African-American community.
Founders of the Black church here in America, with no small risk to himself.
Right.
I mean, to sort of be out as an abolitionist
Yes.
here, when so many of one's peers, of those founding fathers, others who put their name on those documents,
That's right.
held slaves.
Right, right.
He's pushing back on where George Washington is. He's pushing back on where Thomas Jefferson is. Not only is he sort of sympathetic to the Black cause,
Yes,
but he's sharing meals with them.
yes. And
He's going to bat for them. That's amazing. These are his friends.
oh, look at that. That's lovely architecture. William Penn, the Quaker who founded this colony as a haven for religious freedom, and the City Hall properly honors him there at the top. Lovely architecture, beautiful. Another crisis envelops the life of Benjamin Rush, and this one nearly destroys him. In August of 1793, an outbreak of yellow fever ravages the city of Philadelphia. Rush sends Julia and his children out of the city. He's making house calls now, beginning at dawn. Nobody seems to agree about the best treatment, but everybody knows the symptoms: a yellowing of the skin, black vomit, and then certain death.
It's taught in our public schools here in the Philadelphia area because it devastated a huge portion of our population. And those with means got out of the city. They would go to their country homes, they would flee it, and those without means were left here to fend for themselves. A few brave souls came to take care of people.
Benjamin Rush and a handful of assistants stay at their post. In moments of crisis, he says, let Christianity determine what is to be done. Love to our fellow creatures overrides every other consideration. He treats everyone who calls on him, and he even brings the sick into his own home. The death toll is terrifying, and no one is spared, neither children nor adults. After a restless night, I am still alive and preparing for the awful duties of the day. More than 20 people have died in Pear Street alone, Rush writes to his wife. Julia is terrified of losing her husband. She writes him back, think about how I must feel. I haven't slept more than 3 hours, 2 nights past. Rush is working nonstop, emotionally exhausted and physically depleted. He writes about it in his journal. I concealed my sorrow as much as possible from my patients, but when alone, the prospect of what was before me often filled my soul with the most poignant anguish. I wept frequently when retired from the public eye. Rush becomes seriously ill and believes he is going to die. But he manages to recover and gives the credit to the God of mercy. But wherewith shall I come before the great Father and Redeemer of men, he wrote later, and what shall I render unto him for the issue of my life from the grave? Here, all language fails. There was hardly a major social or political issue that failed to get the attention of Benjamin Rush. He laid the foundation for clinical psychiatry. He pushed for criminal justice reform. And when it came to education, Rush believed, as did virtually all of the founders, that without citizens schooled in the history and the principles of the American Revolution, any hope of sustaining freedom in this new republic was a fool's errand. He not only advocated for a universal public school system open to everyone, he argued strenuously for women's education, and he raised money for the Young Ladies Academy of Philadelphia. As Rush explained in a public lecture at the Academy, the elevation of the female mind is considered by some men as unfriendly to the domestic character of a woman. But this is the prejudice of little minds and springs from the same spirit which opposes the general diffusion of knowledge among the citizens of our republic. It is hard to think of a colonial leader who worked harder to put into practice the political and religious ideals of the Declaration and the Constitution. How are you, sir? Good. let's go for the Sangiovese, the Montalcino. That sounds pretty good from Tuscany. Never disappoints. Benjamin Rush had many friends among the American founders, but I think that probably John Adams was his closest confidant. Let me just read you a few lines of what Adams wrote to Benjamin Rush, because they're thinking about and speculating about the future of the American Republic. Is the present state of the nation Republican enough? Is virtue the principle of our government? Is honor, or is ambition and avarice, the thirst for riches, the spirit of party and faction, is this the motive and the principle that governs, he asks. These are serious and dangerous questions, he says. But serious men ought not to flinch from dangerous questions. Benjamin Rush, in his public life, in his private life, he never did.
Rush leaves us this great description of the silence and solemnity of that moment and feeling the great weight of that pen as each one of them affixed their signatures.
He was probably the greatest teacher of the first generation of American doctors. Over 3,000 physicians were trained by Rush directly. As you said, he was a pioneer in thinking about mental health and in psychiatry.
Courage under fire. He's a Revolutionary War veteran. He's an abolitionist when that was a dangerous thing to be. He's a brave doctor in risking his own life in so many ways. So ultimately, when I think of Dr. Rush, I think of a brave man.
He didn't choose the path of limited liabilities. He didn't first think about, how is this issue, this danger, this difficulty, how is it going to affect me? He's going to think instead about, what do I need to do? So I think in answering John Adams' question about the future of the Republic, Benjamin Rush, in one of his essays, I think he gives an answer, not only to Adams, but also to us. And here's how he put it. We profess to be Republicans, and yet we neglect the only means of establishing and perpetuating a Republican form of government. That is, the universal education of our youth in the principles of Christianity by means of the Bible. Now, we live in a different time than Rush lived. Very religiously diverse society. But there's something here that Rush has gotten hold of that I think is important for us. The example of Benjamin Rush is, we don't harden our hearts to human need. We jump into that need. It's the civic and political application of the Golden Rule. And maybe, just maybe, in our current political environment, that's the place to begin. Well, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss other episodes in the Benjamin Rush series. He was a truly remarkable colonial leader. And by the way, this documentary series would be impossible without the generous support from my friends at Founding Forward. So have a quick look and learn about the incredibly important work they're doing to renew the American story. If the American founders agreed on one thing, it was this. Their revolution for freedom would fail without citizens who understood the principles upon which it was built. And that's the mission of Founding Forward, to educate students, teachers, and the broader community about the meaning of the Declaration of the Constitution and to renew the foundation for responsible citizenship. This experience isn't confined to the classroom. The lessons of America's democratic journey come alive when you stand in the places where history happened. At Valley Forge, where the American cause was held together through courage and sacrifice. In Philadelphia, where a band of revolutionaries pledged their lives for the cause of freedom and gave the world the most durable constitution in history. This is how you teach the next generation about the rights and the obligations of citizenship, by immersing them in the American story.
As a teacher, I believe in experiential learning. I loved getting to go to the place that we spoke about.
It helped me see the best version of myself and strive to become it.
These Founding Forward programs really allow you to gain the knowledge that you need to be a more active citizen in our democracy.
Our republic depends on citizens like this. Citizens who understand and embrace the American story and want to shape its future.